Mr. Brian Jordan, welcome to the Take Action Real Estate Podcast. How you doing today, man?
Good.
Brian and I go way back. Actually, Brian and I go way back, kind of in separate directions. I think we originally met because I started wholesaling in Columbus, kind of when you were moving here from Dallas.
Correct.
And I don't remember how we hooked up. I think I called one of your signs that you had out.
You called one of my bandit signs.
But I thought we had connected before that even. I think I called and you're like, yeah, it's me. We already talked or something.
That was after you. Yeah, that was after. You might have called me on a bandit sign, or maybe I reached out to you. But then, yeah, you called me because your name came up in my phone. And I was like, we've already talked.
This was before I knew anything, but I remember when we talked, you thought oh, this John guy, he must be doing deals or something. I hadn't done a deal yet.
Yeah, I don't know why I would have thought that, but yeah, no, I did believe that you were, because that's what I was doing when I was moving back here. The first thing I wanted to do was establish a relationship with other wholesalers, so that if I did get deals, I didn't have a list yet. So
right. And shortly after, we were talking and you moved here, you were doing deals. I think Brian Reitler, my business partner, bought one of your first deals you were doing, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and I don't even remember how I found out about it. Do you remember?
You had to have called one of my signs. When I moved here, I was throwing hundreds of signs. And just
I must have called
people
it then.
left and that's the only way I had to get people. So.
Yeah, I mean that's when I came. When I came here, I didn't know anybody, didn't know anything about the city, and anytime I saw a sign, I'd call it.
Right.
And even I quit doing that because. So, yeah, I didn't know anybody or anything and would call signs. And I don't call signs anymore because 9 out of 10, you never get a call back.
Right.
Literally, you call a sign, hey, we'll buy your house. They don't call you back. I'm like, why put the sign out?
Yep, I agree.
Or
that
they
as
don't
well.
even have a house and they're just trying to look to get your criteria. And it's I can't tell you how many people every week send me an email or call me or whatever. Hey, can I get your buying criteria?
I've never. Well, when I was throwing those signs, I didn't have a house. I was just merely.
It worked.
It was always, oh man, you just missed that one. That was a good deal. It sold over the weekend, man.
Yeah. I remember the sign I saw. I think was in Dublin. Okay, so for everybody who knows Dublin, it's a higher end area.
You go where the money is, right?
Right, and the sign said fixer upper $60,000 or something, which has literally never happened in Dublin. I'm sure because of the market.
I can promise you, it was 65-125. That was my sweet spot sign that I would always throw. To this day, I still throw it.
That's awesome.
So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that first deal, you were selling a house over in Westerville, and we bought it. And I think I had 2 rentals in Columbus by this time and was really looking for a house to flip. And even at that time I had a real estate agent because I didn't have my license,
right.
And he was showing me. I always felt guilty asking him to take me to properties because I knew I wasn't going to offer on it.
Right.
Because they just were overpriced or whatever. Even back then, this was late 2013.
And I think that was a HUD property.
That was. Yep.
Yeah, so I got the contract with HUD, and we can get into that later, how that process works. But that's dried up. I mean, you just don't.
Yeah, you don't see
them
those
anymore.
But yeah, we bought that house and did pretty well on it.
Good.
I think you did too. So.
Yeah, I'm sure I did.
So when you came, it was about 5 years ago, I think we met, and you were here from Dallas. What were you doing in Dallas?
So I moved to Dallas. I was originally kind of in the nightlife industry, managing nightclubs. I always had a construction background. I had flipped houses at that point, but got away from it. The owner of a nightclub that I was managing actually owned a real estate investment firm called New Western Acquisitions. New Western Acquisitions now is a huge company. At first, they were just in Dallas, but I think they're in 20-some cities now. They're doing, just out of the Dallas office, when I was there, we were doing 25 to 30 wholesale deals a month. Wow. Just out of that office. I mean, there were months when we were bringing in, $200,000-$300,000 in wholesale fees in the office in a single month.
Wow.
Every month. And now this was back 2010. So, everybody's losing their minds because the market's crashed and we're just cleaning up.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah. So you were there from 2010 to what, about 2013?
2012. Then I went out. I was there. I had a month where I brought in $96,000 in fees for them. And my commission, I think at the time, was 30%. And so I made 30-some grand. best month of my life. I've never made that much money in a single month. And then I was like, well, what happened to the other 66,000? And that ate at me for a good month or so. And finally, I just left the office and went out on my own.
Yeah. Did you do stuff on your own in Dallas, or was that when you came here?
Yeah, no, I did stuff on my own in
okay.
Dallas for a year or so.
And you already had the contacts with the buyers and stuff like that?
No, as a courtesy to them, I didn't feel it was right to take my buyers list with
okay.
me, so
Yeah.
I created a whole new buyers list. I didn't want any issues with them. They were
Right.
friends. They tried to sue me for a non-compete.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it never went anywhere. But yeah, I just didn't want to give them any angle, so I just found new buyers and
Right.
started over.
Right.
But I knew the process, so as far as acquiring them,
Right.
and so that was good. Once I left, 3 or 4 more guys bailed within a couple weeks, and then they all came and worked with me.
Oh, really?
And I handled.
No wonder they sued you.
Yeah. They ended up. I had nothing to do with that. They just needed. They needed a company to buy houses under. They needed transactional funding.
Gotcha.
I had all that stuff set up.
The whole structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
when you moved from Dallas to here and went from wholesaling there to wholesaling here, what did you see like with the market? What were the biggest differences in kind of the way that you were doing business between the two locations?
So at the time, I was only doing deals off the MLS. That's all I knew. I didn't know off market. I didn't know direct mail. I didn't know any of that stuff.
Okay.
So the first thing was in 2000, I think late 2012 or late 2013. Might have been late 2013 when I came. The market in Columbus was about 2 years behind what I had seen in Dallas.
Right.
So like where we were still having a ton of deals that weren't selling and price dropping and things like that, Dallas had all the hedge funds moved in. At that time, they were number one market in the country.
So they were kind of over the hump, and
Yeah.
Columbus was still trying to get there.
And so all the hedge funds had moved in and really pretty much screwed it up for your mom and pop investor.
Right.
Because they were paying so much for them.
On the MLS.
Correct. So when I got here, that would be the biggest thing. You know, the market was about 2 years behind. And then the other thing was just dealing with real estate agents. It was a very different atmosphere with the real estate agents. In Dallas, real estate agents seem to work together. And here, it's like they want to throw you under the bus. I think the state has them so scared of, I don't know, whatever. But, you know, it just doesn't seem to be from my experience, a very helpful community with each other.
Right.
Like turning you in.
Yeah. I was going to say, did you ever have any kind of bad situations, or maybe you were wholesaling something off the MLS and the agent didn't understand what you were doing or how it was working?
Absolutely. I had an agent. So I'm sitting at my desk, and I had sent out a HUD property, and I had gotten some action on it. Guy lowballed me, whatever. I'm sitting there, and I get a notice that somebody joined my buyers list through my website. And it was at ohio.gov was his email address. And I'm like, oh no, let's see what this is. So I Googled the email address that he submitted, and it turns out he's the lead investigator for the Division of Real Estate. So I immediately call him and say, hey, you know, what's going on? He said, well, I got a complaint that you're, you know, trying to sell properties and you're not an agent. At this time, I realized he didn't know who I was. And so I didn't give him any information. I didn't tell him I was an agent. I said, okay, well, would you mind sending me the advertisement? Because I'm not really sure what you're referencing here. So he sent that to me. And once he sent me that, I could tell who turned me in.
Oh.
And it was the real estate agent that is an investor that had lowballed me.
Oh.
I didn't accept his offer. He turned me in.
Gotcha. They were mad they didn't get it.
Yeah. So
Pathetic.
yeah, it really is. Like, it just, and that was one of my first things. Now, go back to that investigator. Him and he has left the Division of Real Estate, and him and I have become friends and done deals together.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
remember you telling me that
yeah.
story. That's funny.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I remember like when I was getting started here and you were, had just gotten here as well. There was kind of on Bigger Pockets, biggerpockets.com, a forum website. There's a lot of people talking about Columbus kind of cracking down on wholesalers.
Yes.
And I remember the board all of Ohio.
Yeah.
And I remember the Board of Realtors coming out with articles like saying, this is what wholesaling is. If you see it, make sure, you report it. That was, 4 or 5 years ago. But as far as I know, they haven't really gone after many wholesalers as long as they have a license, right?
Correct. I don't believe they have. I mean, there was a cannot remember his name off the top of my head. I think his first name's Jeff. There's a lawyer out of Cleveland that is pro wholesaling, and he actually sat down with the division, and there was a link. There was the video of it was actually on the homepage of the Division of Real Estate.
Yep.
Of them talking and sorting through what is legal and what is not. But I have never heard of anybody getting in trouble. I mean, I'm sure it happens, but I think if you do the next, for me, it's like I have a mentality of doing the right thing. So I just don't seem, I'm not, if somebody decides they don't want to sell, okay. Like, I only want to buy your house if you want to sell.
Right.
I'm not going to force you to sell. I'm not,
Absolutely.
So it's just not worth it. You move on to the next one.
Right. And what we're talking about for people who don't know is mostly assigning contracts. You get a property under contract and you assign that contract to a buyer and they bring the money. And so real estate is, the only industry where that's kind of a gray area. I mean, you can assign contracts in every other aspect of business. And
Correct.
For some reason, the board or, real estate law says that it doesn't really say much about it, but, people have been, taken to court or whatever over it in different states and cities and stuff. So it's kind of a weird dynamic how, assigning a contract is totally fine in most other business situations, but in real estate, for some reason, they've said they don't want that. So.
Well, and here's a funny story. So it's complaint driven. So they're not actively looking for people. It only happens if a complaint is filed against you.
Oh, okay.
And I had a situation where a girl calls me, I think off of a Craigslist We Buy Houses ad. She calls me, tells me she has a house to sell. I meet her out there. There's tenants in the house. We walk through. We agree to a price. Like, looking back, I can see some red flags that I probably should have been like, what's going on here? Like, she didn't even look at the contract. She went straight to the third page and signed it. And no big deal. We go to closing. Something was happening. It just didn't feel right. The title company had cleared it. We were ready to close. I had a buyer. I was about to make a very good wholesale fee, over $20,000 wholesale fee on it. But something didn't feel right. So I went and searched the recorder's office and found an old mortgage because she had gotten the house just a couple months ago in a quitclaim deed.
Right.
And so I went back and found an old mortgage that the original owner had signed her mortgage on, compared that signature to the signature on the quitclaim deed, not even close. So then I tracked down the notary that notarized it, and she's in not a good neighborhood. I go knock on her door and ask her, do you remember this transaction? She can't even remember it from two months ago.
Hadn't recorded it or anything.
She's like, I do car titles. And then I come to find out that the notary was a friend of this girl's mom. She literally stole the house.
Yeah.
Stole the house.
She basically quit claimed it
to herself.
using,
Rented it out. Talk about
I remember walking through this house. I think I went to this house.
Over in Westgate.
Yeah, it was in Westgate.
Yeah.
Did you go too, John?
I didn't go to the
Matter
house.
of fact,
I
were
remember.
you the buyer?
We were talking about buying. I don't think we
No,
got
I
the highest
think,
offer on it. I think you got a higher offer than us. That was a weird situation. I mean, every room had like a different group in it.
Yes. We'll talk about a business model: steal houses and then rent them out. Like who does that?
And I'm sure she still wasn't paying the property tax or insurance or anything.
No. And then here's what made me think of that was talking about the Division of Real Estate. So I call the Division of Real Estate to turn her in, and the divisions. I tell them the story, and they're like, "So was she acting as a real estate agent?" And I said, "No," and they're like, "There's nothing we can do." I'm like, the woman stole a house. Who else am I supposed to call? So,
yeah, the Division of Real Estate, I think they only oversee or regulate real estate agents
or people acting as real estate agents without a license. So it's strictly that.
Were you able to get a hold of the actual owner of the house?
Yeah, so I skip traced this woman, came up with about 10 numbers, called them all, ended up finding her ex-husband down in like Alabama or something. And he called her. She called me the next day and said, you know, what's going on? And I explained it to her. And this poor woman, she's in the military, overseas, you know, supporting our country. And you got some scumbag back here stole her house.
Yeah.
And it's not a quick fix. Like number one, they destroyed it. And number two, she had to then hire attorneys to then undo the damage that this girl had done. It wasn't an easy like, oh, I'll just file a new quitclaim deed. No, it's
right.
So
right.
They were supposed to. They strung it along. Finally, the prosecutor got a hold of me, and they're like, be prepared to testify, be at court on this day. And that happened like 3 or 4 times. In the morning of, they'd be like, oh, it's been postponed. And then I never heard anything about it. So
yeah, boy, some people.
There's
that's
a lot of
incredible.
crazy stories
It's
we get into. Yep.
It's crazy.
So yeah, we've done what? We've probably bought maybe 20, 30 houses from you over the last 5 years.
Yep.
But on top of that, we've also done a few deals together. I remember there was a duplex over in Westerville that I think we got the lead, and we knew you had buyers. And
That was the first deal I think we did together.
Yeah, we partnered on, and I think we got it under contract, and you had a buyer, and we wholesaled it basically, or double closed or something, and split the profit. I think we made like $15,000 or something on that. It was a really easy transaction. And then we did.
Well, I think it might have been more than that, because I think I brought you a check for $9,000 and met you in a Bob Evans parking lot.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
That's how we do deals here in Columbus.
Yeah, exactly.
Bob Evans parking lot.
We pulled up. I gave you the check, and it was on to the next one.
Yeah.
And that guy, I think there was a basement area, but it was a walkout basement, so it had egress and everything. I think he added another bedroom, and he got way past what our projected rents were.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
that.
It was an amazing deal for that guy as well.
And that was before Brian and I were really aggressively buying rentals. If it wasn't, I'm sure we would have picked that thing up. And I mean, I think we had it under contract for like 90.
Yeah,
or 90 or something.
It was under 100. I think.
A duplex in Westerville Schools, like that thing's probably worth $250
like
now.
Hillside duplex, just beautiful setting at the end of a cul-de-sac. Like, it was nice.
If only we knew now what we knew then.
Right.
However the saying goes. And then we did the other one in Southern Orchards, where we kind of partnered on the deal, and Wilson.
Yeah.
Split. Did we even make? I don't even think we.
I
made
didn't
a
make
profit.
anything. I think
we
just
maybe
unloaded.
made 1,000 or two, I don't even.
Yeah,
Well, we had
was-
talked about. I think originally we were going to rehab it and split it, and then I don't know what happened, but we just were like, "Oh, put it on the MLS." And again, that was right as that area was taking off. I've never seen an area go from no available properties to like 20 active listings on it.
Yeah.
In such a quick time.
And I think that was right around the same time that you were kind of changing your focus in what you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I switched over to barbecue.
Yeah. So I thought
Wholesaling and barbecue.
Yeah,
right?
so I love your story, and I think it's funny because most people who want to get into real estate, they have a full-time day job. And so they're looking to get out of that full-time day job and get into real estate investing. So usually they're doing both at the same time, just out of necessity. Now you were a full-time real estate investor, and you then jumped into a whole nother kind of field, which is barbecue.
Yeah. Yep. So living in Dallas, I fell in love with Central Texas style barbecue and decided that, hey, let's open a food truck in Columbus. And, it did really well. And now we have
still doing really well.
Still doing really well. We have 2 locations now, actual brick and mortar. But I've pulled away from that and am back into real estate full time. I mean, this is my passion.
Right.
And it helped, the barbecue helped me realize that. Actively managing, millennials and in the barbecue world or whatever. I mean, it was just the managing a staff of hourly minimum wage employees just wasn't fun for me.
Right.
So.
And like between, a year or two in that transition, and you were kind of going back and forth where you might market a lot one month and have a few deals, and then you go a month or two without because you were focused on the barbecue. And, we wouldn't hear from you for a couple months, and then you'd throw us a deal and you'd snatch it up. And
with you guys, at the time I was sending, you guys were getting everything first.
Yeah.
I mean, I would send it to you and you guys would tell me yes or no. And
because you didn't have much time, and that was probably the easiest way to do it.
It was the easiest way. And that whole time I had this rock star VA, and that whole time I continued to pay him his hourly wage, which was $400 a week. I continued to pay him for a very long time.
Just to keep him.
Right.
Right.
And it's paid off. I mean,
Right.
thank God I held on to him.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't let anybody steal him.
And for everybody who's interested in barbecue in Columbus, Legacy Smokehouse.
Legacy
You
Smokehouse.
guys have what, 3 locations now? Or?
We have 2.
2, okay.
Yep, one on Greenlawn Ave and then the other one in Old Hilliard.
Yeah,
Old
awesome.
downtown Hilliard.
Brian and I were lucky enough to be your guinea pigs while you were
Yeah,
getting it up and
that's
running.
right. That's right.
That's good over there.
Come over, get some brisket and some
Yep.
pulled pork. That stuff is delicious, man.
Oh, talk about, I mean, it's so crazy to think, like, you know, you have a restaurant, it takes time to pay off your initial investment. There's so many challenges for it. And I'm not so sure when I'll start to see the dividends from a couple restaurants because we're continuing to grow. Hopefully there'll be additional locations. And then you go to real estate and it's like, you know, there's those great deals where you spend an hour on it and you make an obscene amount of money. So,
Oh, yeah.
I'll take real estate all day.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I think real estate gives you the opportunity to get into a lot of situations where you're helping people at
Absolutely.
a restaurant. You're not really helping. You're sort of, you know, helping people through the problems. Hey, my food's cold, or
Right.
you know, you're
Right.
dealing
I
with
mean,
annoyances.
it's all service oriented, and that's, you know, it's great. But there's, for me, the challenges of what goes into not only are we a restaurant, but we're also full bar, and so then
Right.
you have all of those challenges with liquor and beer and
sure the
alcohol.
regulations
Yeah,
that
so
come through, and
it was just there's no way that startup business could pay me what I could make doing real
Sure.
estate, and so it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yep.
And plus, I'm just more passionate. For the barbecue, it was kind of like, okay, I figured it out. I kind of cracked the code on how to make a brisket properly, and then people loved it. And so for me, it was kind of like, okay, back to real estate. Like I did.
okay, I did it.
Yeah, like the
Succeeded.
challenge is complete, and you know.
Right. Awesome.
And now I'm committed to wholesaling only.
Right.
I have a real bad problem with like the shiny things and getting distracted. So it's kind of like a mantra, like
Staying focused.
wholesaling. Yeah, my VA, he wants to chase every deal with creative this and that. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do. We had a guy call the other day. He asked us if we would pawn his house.
Pawn it.
He wanted to pawn his house. He wanted us to give him $6,000 and he was going to quit claim deed the house to him. And I was like, that sounds crazy. So no, let's just move on to the next one. And I just
Yeah.
kind of pass it up. We're still going to see if we can't get the price he needs. But you know, for now, it's just one of those things. You never know what's going to come at you.
Right. And I truly believe that you are probably the best wholesaler. I mean, you're the best wholesaler I've worked with, but probably
thank you.
one of the best ones in Columbus. I mean, you've always been very honest with us, and you know, part of that's because we have a friendship, and we've always been pretty open with each other and stuff. I mean, do you have any, you know, do you have some maybe tips or some things that you think are the most important when wholesaling?
Yeah. So, you know, I appreciate that, what you just said, and I'm that honest with everybody. So, like, a lot of times people will know. I mean, there's times I don't necessarily divulge all the information as far as what I'm making on a deal, but
Right.
for the most part, I will tell people, like, here's where I'm at, here's where I need to be. You know, if you can meet that price, great. If not, I'm going to market it to my list, and if I don't get more, then you know, you can have it. I would say work on comps. You know, being a good wholesaler comes down to realistic comps. And don't get me wrong, I still push them too, to make the numbers look a little sweeter. You try not to. I'll tell you what, I will never do an ARV that is so far-fetched that I can't at least give you a case for what my reasoning is.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so I might be at top of market, but I will never, like, if the highest house sold in a little pocket is 165, I'm not going to try and tell you, oh, you're going to get 185.
Right.
You know, I may put it at 165, and you might come back and say, well, you know, that was a random one-off house. Everything else is in the 140s, you know, whatever it is, but I'll always have something to back that up. So learning how to pull comps, and then your estimate of repairs is big.
Yep.
And so my background, I had flipped houses. I had remodeled houses for probably 15 different houses for investors in Dallas, where I was a contractor. So I had a real good grasp of what things cost. But you throw a number. For me now, I walk into a house, I spend 5 minutes there, and I'm like, it's $20,000, or
right. Right.
I'm not.
I mean, that's similar to what we do the first time you go through a house.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to go through with a fine-tooth comb. It's kind of, you're just getting the estimate there.
Right. And I'm in the process of scaling my business, so I'm going to have to start to create processes and procedures for people that are boots on the ground. And it'll get more involved with like a checklist. And, I go in, I snap 10, 15 pictures. I get wholesalers that'll send me deals, and it's like 68 pictures. I'm like, what could you possibly be taking pictures of? And then it's like,
and there's one of the cat.
yeah,
and one
yeah,
of, like,
and it's like
There's a blurry one of a person
Yes.
walking through
yes,
a
I'm
door.
like, and that's the other thing. Like, I try to take really good pictures. I am very particular about the way I want them. I know that I'm selling kind of a distressed piece of property, but I at least want to put whatever lipstick on it that I can, because getting a buyer out there, that's the first challenge, right? I mean, the numbers and the pictures are hopefully motivate them to hop in their car, especially in winters in Columbus. You've got a limited window because it gets dark so early, and
Yep.
we've got like 2 inches of ice on the roads today. So you want to do the best you can.
I think pictures are important because, I don't really care about a wall.
Right.
Like, a wall is easy to fix and paint. I want to know what the furnace looks like. I want to know what the water tank looks like. The things that are going to cost a lot of money,
Right.
I want to have my eyes on those. And if you can get a good picture of that, then you don't even need to go to the house sometimes.
Well, and so I was training a guy recently, and we had a place that the furnace had been stolen, the water heater had been stolen, but you still had ductwork coming down. You still had some CPVC piping coming down where the water heater used to be. And he says, do I take this picture since there's nothing there? I'm like, absolutely. Because if we don't include a picture showing it's not there, the buyer's going to wonder.
And they're going to
is it
ask.
there? Right.
So
right.
might as well answer the question
Right.
before they ask it.
Exactly.
How about not including the address? I cannot stand that. Wholesalers blast them out with just the street, no address, or maybe they'll have like the first number of the address and then
The 100
asterisk,
block
asterisk.
of.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. And then every time you have to email them, and after a while you're just like, you know what, I don't even care anymore. I'm not even going to spend the time.
Right. And that's the thing. So for me, especially when you were buying stuff off the MLS, which when I first moved back, I think I did around 35 deals my first year in Columbus, 100% off the MLS. And so for a lot of buyers, the objection is, well, it was on the MLS. Why would I buy it from you? Well, my answer is, hopefully I'm providing you a service. I'm the one that did the due diligence, went out, took pictures, ran the comps, estimated the repairs, and I'm now presenting it to you, hopefully on a silver platter, with a buy it now price, as opposed to you having to schedule it with a realtor 2, 3, 4 days out because your schedule doesn't allow it. You know what I mean? So hopefully I'm saving time and energy, and that was where I felt my value was as a wholesaler with deals on the MLS.
Yeah, and I think there's a place for it as far as you're taking the time to comb through the MLS to find the deal.
It's not easy.
Yeah, at the time there's hundreds and hundreds of distressed properties, and who has the time if you're working a day job to go through them all?
Right, and doing it 2 or 3 times a day. So you set up your
Right.
hot sheets with certain criteria, and it was 2 to 3 times a day. So when a property would take a price drop, hopefully I had already looked at it 2 weeks ago,
Right.
but the numbers didn't work. Now it takes a price drop, and I'm shooting an offer as opposed to a guy calling his realtor, hey, this took a price drop. Can you make an appointment for 2 days from now?
Right.
I've got it under contract by then.
Right.
So
Right.
that was the speed factor as well.
And the other benefit, which I think you usually did, or at least it happened a lot, where if property might be listed at 80 and you'd get it at 65 and wholesale it for 72 or something.
Absolutely.
So that's on the market at 80, and somebody's complaining like, well, why can't I buy it off the MLS? Well, you're already getting it cheaper than the list price.
Right.
So I truly believe that you are providing a benefit, and we bought a few from you that were like that. Where,
Yeah, the numbers are the numbers. It doesn't matter what it's listed at on the MLS. The numbers are the numbers. If they had it listed at 80, I wasn't going to put it at 78 when I knew that didn't work as a number. So I would sell it for 72. That being said, there were some that were listed at 40. I got for 36 and sold them for 42. So
Right.
that's the opposite. People would say,
Right.
well, it's only listed for 40 on the MLS and you're charging 42. And, my answer would be, well, it took a price drop. It was at 50 and they dropped it to 40. And I caught it on that day. Or, bottom line is, do the numbers work at 42?
Right.
The MLS is irrelevant, and it's irrelevant what I paid for it.
And I think some of that's true. Like, I have gotten frustrated in the past with wholesalers. There's been a few deals that you've made more money as the wholesaler than
Yes.
we've made as the buyer that rehabs it, that lists it and sells it. So we put all this time and effort and stress of rehabbing and dealing
I'm sure
with
you cussed me on
contractors.
more than one occasion.
And I just think, man, that dog, he got away with. But at the same time, wholesalers provide so much value, kicking up deals that we can't get every deal with our marketing, with our staff. We can't get every deal. So it broadens our network or our base of potential income.
And you guys were great, because I don't believe that you have ever paid like more than you really wanted to. Like, I don't think you made a deal and thought, wow, we really at the time you bought it.
Right.
You never felt like, oh man, he really got us on this one. I know with John, our relationship was, you would wait until after we handshook, had a handshake, like, all right, we'll take it. Now tell me, what are you making on it? And I would tell you, and sometimes I'd be like, are you sure you want to know? But yeah, it was always, there was no animosity. As you guys know, doing your own off-market marketing, that you have to monetize every lead, because you just don't know when the next one's going to come in.
Right. And it's funny because, we have that openness. And since I was always in acquisitions, you and I were working together, and you would tell me what you were making, and then I'd go lie to Brian about how much you were making, because I knew that it would tick him off. And if I told him a lower number, yeah, he's making like $4,000, he'd be like, oh, okay, that's okay.
Right.
If I told him you're making 20, he'd
Well,
start
then I
getting
won't
nutty.
tell you what I made that one month. I think you guys bought like 5 houses off of me, and they were probably 5 of the largest spreads I've ever had.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you
Was
guys-
that the Hanford-Doughton evening?
Yeah.
Those were some of the thinnest deals we had at the end, too.
No, we
Those
ended up
assets.
Hanford and
Hanford
we
and
ended up
Doughton
making a
were
lot of them.
okay.
And hopefully you guys did good. I think I sold you a 4-pack of rentals.
Yeah,
Those
Those
have
those
been
are gold.
fantastic.
yeah, but hindsight, we look back at those. I think we bought those for about $55,000 a piece.
Yeah.
Okay, they're worth $125 a piece today.
See, now
right?
that's
So it's like,
now I
yeah,
hate
like
you.
you made so you made the quick money.
You haven't
and-
managed the tenants.
right. Well, and I know on that 4-pack I made 19,000.
Right.
I was trying to make 5 a piece. Somehow it came out. I think you just said we can pay this, and it was close, and so I made 19. But you've got a ton of equity. So
Yeah.
Right. So
And those houses were a wreck. In fact, we still have one of the tenants. She still lives there, and we
I'll bet
haven't
I can guess who.
we
it
haven't
is.
fixed the house at all. Like, we did a little bit of work on the outside.
We did the bathroom.
We
think.
did remodel the bathroom while she was there, but
It's one of the situations where like we kind of wish that they would end their lease, but we raise the rent. They're still paying it. They don't ask for a whole lot, and they don't mind living there. So we're
Right.
gonna.
Well, and I'm sure I passed on all the information to you. Like, I remember talking to that landlord when we were buying them and getting them under contract. They had one tenant who, she might go late, but she had been there like 12 years, and she always ends up paying. Like, she'll spend every day at the casino playing slots, and she might spend her paychecks and not have rent on the first, but eventually she'll pay. And so
Yep.
that might be the same woman. I don't know.
It could be. She's a lovely lady. It's funny. We were just talking about this last week or 2 weeks ago. How at first, she would call us every month with a sob story, and we tell her like, just have it in by the 10th, and it'll avoid eviction. And so after a few months of us telling her that, she just quit calling, and she just, enough with the sob story, no more tears and anything.
Right.
She just pays it late every month and pays the late fees.
That's her.
Yeah.
Because they said she pays, not only has she been there for X amount of years, not only does she always pay the rent, but she pays a late fee every single month.
we have several tenants that do that. I don't really understand that model, but
Right.
it works for us.
Yeah, I mean, how much in late fees do we make every month? I mean, thousands. of
Well,
dollars.
I had heard that like storage units, investing in storage units, that the late fees alone pay for all of your labor in the business.
I believe it.
So, I mean, think of how much late fees cover on your expenses as far as like an hourly employee in the office. It probably pays for a couple of people, I would imagine.
Right.
So,
And we have a contest. We give out a gift card at the end of the year, a few $100s to the tenants who've paid rent every month on time.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of counterintuitive because we're incentivizing them to pay rent on time, but we make so much money off of late fees. So
Right.
I don't know.
What you should do is put all the late fees in a pool
Yeah.
and then distribute it to the people that pay.
That'd be a lot of money. That'd be a lot of money.
Maybe just a portion.
Yeah, maybe just
percentage.
A percentage.
That's good stuff. I want to go back, like you were talking about comps, and I just wanted
Sure.
to mention, like, you've always done a good job on comps, and I agree. Like, some of them may be a little bit high, but there's room. There's room for it. If you spend this $40,000 budget, you're going to be putting granite countertop, and none of the
Right.
comps have that. So how
Right.
high can it go, right?
Right.
But I mean, there's so many, and it's funny now. Wholesalers just come out of the woodwork the way the market is right now. I mean,
Yes.
I get added to probably 5 lists a week of new wholesalers with they don't even have deals yet, or maybe they do, and they're in Hilltop selling them for $80,000 or something.
Right.
For everyone who knows the area, you know what I'm talking about. But it's like they're going to Zillow maybe, and so for instance, we got a deal like 2 weeks ago, or I say deal, a lead from a wholesaler, and it's east of Parsons, and they're pulling comps from German Village.
Right.
Right. And it's like, okay, German Village, Parsons is a pretty big defining road, where east of Parsons is not nearly as valuable. In German Village, obviously comps are in between 300,000 and 400,000, and east of Parsons they're maybe 150 or something.
Right.
So you would think it's common sense to do your comps correctly, but it's amazing how many of these new wholesalers are really failing at that.
Are you finding that those things like that are coming from guys that are local, or maybe doing virtual wholesaling?
I think both. I think both. I think the virtual wholesaling for sure, just because they're not familiar.
Right.
They when they look at German Village, they don't see Parsons as a defining boundary,
Right.
And they're just going past that. And then also new people getting in the market.
Right.
They may know the neighborhoods, but they just don't know how to comp correctly.
So the way I was taught at New Western was that you use the same. We were told these are the same basic principles that an appraiser uses.
Yeah.
So you want 3 to 5 comparables within 20% of the actual square footage. So if your house is 1,000 square feet, you can include comps from 800 to 1,200, so 20% up or down.
Right.
You don't cross over any major thoroughfares. Parsons Avenue is a major thoroughfare to me.
To anybody, it should be.
Right.
If you're
Right.
not using Parsons as a major divider, you should.
Right. And so if you get nothing else out of this podcast today, but so in the same decade built. So obviously you can't compare a house from the 30s into one that was built 2 years ago. What else? So 3 to 5, same neighborhood, not crossing over any major thoroughfares.
What about garages and basements and stuff like that, or are those add-ons?
I kind of tweak the stuff accordingly. If my high comp is 185 and there's no garage, and it depends. If I've included money in the budget to build a garage, then I'll compare it to one with a garage. If the numbers don't work, it just doesn't make sense to add the 15 grand, 20 grand for a garage because it skews the deal, then I'll comp it against ones that don't have a garage.
Right.
Or do my best to pulling comps is an art, as you know. There is no science to it. It's an art, and once you have somebody that's good at it or you become good at it, it makes a big difference. My guys that flip, for the most part, the comps that I gave you guys, even though the repairs might have been off, were my comps ever off to where I said you would make 400 and it sold for 360?
No, I think especially in this market, like by the time we
Right,
rehabbed it,
right.
it was usually selling more.
Right.
So
Now the estimate on my repairs could have been off. Especially
Only a
ours.
only a
on Dotton.
smidge.
Or ours.
Right. Ultimately, it's your fault, right? No. So buyer does their own due diligence.
Well,
so.
absolutely. You can, and that's the truth. You can say whatever you want. We're gonna do our numbers our way,
Right,
and make sure
right.
that it works.
Well, and I think Dotton and what was the other one you mentioned?
Hanford.
Evening.
No, Hanford was good. You guys did
Evening.
okay.
Yeah, we did good on those.
Dotton and Evening, I think you had some contractor issues.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Contractor
evening we
issues.
went double the budget on the rehab, which didn't help.
But
we also
Which it
sold
was probably the
yes.
biggest house we'd probably ever rehab.
I think we sold it like 60,000 higher than what you had. Yeah.
No, that house was beautiful. It could have been, and I'm sure you guys made it top notch. So
But it was nice. It was a cool house too with the walkout basement.
yeah, right.
It was a neat house. Cool. Well, man, it's great having you here.
Thank you.
Do you How can people get a hold of you? I mean, I know you're moving down to Florida pretty soon, right?
I'm
But you're
hoping so.
You're
yes.
still going to be wholesaling here. So
Yeah.
people,
So I've got an office that's being built out down in Florida right now. The goal is to live down there full time, but still, virtual wholesale up here, and then expand into other markets as well.
right.
Oh.
So are you on Facebook? You got an email?
Yeah,
that you
so
wanna give
Facebook,
people, or-
Brian Jordan. I've got a OH Property Shop is my web address to reach out regarding buying off-market properties or
Okay.
wholesale deals. And then if you have a house to sell. No, so that's where you can reach me, or give me a call on my cell, 614-907-3104.
Awesome. And do you have any last tips for maybe wholesalers who are trying to get started, or I know you don't want to create your own competition?
Oh,
but-
I don't mind. I think, I used to, just recently and thinking about moving and bringing on people, I was afraid to because I thought the guy I'm going to hire is going to come in, steal my book of business, and go out on his own and do it. And I was listening to a podcast, a different podcast, and they were talking about living in a place of abundance versus fear. Like that place I was in was fear. I was fearful that somebody was going to steal my business. Now it's like abundance. Okay, you know what? If he does come in, I don't believe he can do it as good as me anyways. So if he does come in, I think there's room enough for the both of us anyways. And in order to grow, I have to let that go. I had to learn to let that go. But I also heard a really good piece of advice yesterday that was basically a guy was, I think it was a guru or somebody, and he was telling the story, but it kind of resonated with me that he's like, I don't know any successful investors that did one deal.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like none of them did just one deal and quit. So it's like, get over that hump. Just take action.
Right.
Do it. Just, get a mentor, get somebody. People can call me. I offer that to people all the time. Like, if you get a deal, I'm never going to go behind you and try and take it from you. That's short money. I don't have time to do that anyways. And it's just not in my nature to try and sneak around somebody and take a deal from them. So if you need me to pull comps or show you, like, all of those tasks, I have now recorded screen videos of how to do them. I'll send them to anybody.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the abundance mentality, and we feel the same way here. And we've bought probably half a dozen deals just from people who they were looking for advice, and they were maybe a beginning wholesaler, beginning investor, and we took the time to sit down with them and talk to them and answer their questions. And within a couple of months, they say, "Hey, I got this deal, doesn't work for me, but do you mind if I pass it on to you?"
Right.
We end up buying them, and they get a referral fee or a wholesale fee, and I mean, it's great. To live in fear, it's not
It's
fun.
crippling.
Yeah, it's not fun, and it's not going to get you more business.
And and it's difficult because you live, like, for being in Columbus, we have met up numerous times at like little just meetups that we did with 4, 5, 6 guys that are in the business, and we would tell the horror stories or the war stories about what had happened to us. But it's difficult because there's not a whole, like, nobody's going to share all their information in the same market. And I think that's what makes masterminds out of state and things like that kind of valuable. But
Yeah.
Still, like, if you guys ask me a question straight up, I'll give you the answer for it.
Right.
What are you doing? Who are you mailing to? I'll tell you.
Right.
So
Right. Awesome. Good stuff. Well, again, we appreciate you being here.
absolutely.
Buddy, it's always great to hang out with you.
Absolutely. Thank
Pretty
you.
much have
Thank
enjoyed the years we've known each other and look forward to
you.
many more in the future.
Yeah, I hope we can keep doing it.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.